I think we can all agree that checkmate's pretty important in chess. Today we're going to look at 7 checkmate patterns that everybody needs to know right when you get started with chess. Let's have a look. First we'll get started looking at back rank checkmate. And its close cousins, corridor checkmate. And if you played a move ahead of time, then it's Anastasia's mate that ends up being a corridor mate. In our first position, if it's white's move, white can move right away and play a back rank checkmate. But what if it's black's move? If it's black's move, guess what? Black gets to do the same. A back rank checkmate, you're checking that king along that back wall. He's trapped by his own pieces, or maybe by a combination of his own pieces and your pieces. You can also do it with a queen. Here, let's see the queen going up to the back rank for white. And now let's see black moving their queen into the corner for the back rank checkmate. Notice how it also guards the escape square, so the king can't escape from that. Now, a corridor checkmate is a checkmate along a file. And here we see a corridor checkmate for white on the c file. The black king can't escape to the side because of the pawn. And for white, it's on the g file that white gets checkmated and he can't escape because the bishop guards his escape square f1. So mate along that file. Now, as I mentioned, Anastasia's mate is a special name we call it if you set up your corridor mate on the side of the board by sacrificing to open up that file. So here, the knight jumps in check. The only move for black is to capture it, and that sets up an Anastasia's mate or corridor mate along that side file. And same position if it had been black's turn. Now black is actually going to sacrifice their queen to open the a file. And now the rook comes over, and with the knight and pawn guarding the escape squares, that is Anastasia's mate, or corridor mate, at the end there. All right, our next checkmate pattern, we are going to look at the opera mate. And that was made famous because of Paul Morphy playing his game at the opera in 1858. If you haven't watched the Morphy videos, check those out. There's 3 of them, and they cover his life from when he was young, and in America, and when he played in Europe as well. All right, so let's have a look at what the position actually looks like. See that in Morphy's game from 1858, he needed to get his rook up to the top, but the knight was in the way. So he sacrificed his queen to deflect or bait the knight out of the way, and that opens up the d file, and he was able to get the checkmate. Now, it's not always going to look as pretty as Morphy doing it in the opera mate. Here we see black can play a checkmate down in the corner with rook to a1, but also, if it's white's turn, it could be a sideways opera mate. You can see the white rook swinging over to the h file guarded by the bishop. And it only works at opera mate if you're protected by your bishop guarding that. And it could be a queen that protects it as well. Okay, now we're going to look at in-your-face checkmate. So in in-your-face checkmate, there's 2 that are very close to it, in-your-cheek checkmate and in-your-ear checkmate. And in-your-face checkmate is just like it sounds. The queen right in front of the king's face for checkmate. Make sure she's protected. Make sure your queen is guarded by something. Now on to our in-your-face checkmate positions. The queen, the white queen, is supported by the rook, captures the pawn, and notice when she's right in his face, she's checking him and guarding the squares next to him so he can't run away. And he can't take her because the rook is there. Now if it's black's turn, then the black queen goes right in the king's face. She didn't have to capture anything and is supported by the knight for the in-your-face checkmate. Now the slight variations on that, we're going to see an in-your-cheek checkmate. Notice if the queen moved right in front of the king in this position, that the knight would capture. And so instead, the queen goes all the way and takes the pawn on h7 guarded by the rook. The king can't take. That's an in-your-cheek checkmate. And we're going to see that black does the same thing because moving right next to the king is not a good idea. The white knight guards that. So black plays queen to a2, supported by the rook, for an in-your-cheek checkmate. And here's an in-your-ear checkmate, just like it sounds. The white queen right in the king's ear, right next to him for checkmate. And if it's black's turn, now notice once again the knight is there to guard g2, so you can't do an in-your-face checkmate, but the black queen can move in his ear for checkmate, supported by the bishop all the way back there. All right, our next checkmate pattern that we're going to see is swallow's tail mate, named after the tail of the bird, swallow, and it has like a split in it. And so let's see what a checkmate pattern would look like if it had a little split in it. I'm kind of intrigued myself. Let's find out. Here it is. So look at the black king. And if this is his tail, then it doesn't go all the way back this way. There's a little gap in the middle there. But the queen has the power to check him and guard his escape square. So she moves it into e5, checkmate. And if it had been black's turn, we see the same pattern for the poor white king. Can't run to the side or backwards because he's blocked. His only escape is diagonal and into that gap of the swallow's tail. But when the queen moves to a3, that's checkmate, and he can't escape that. So that's a swallow's tail mate. Now, we are drawing near the end. We've just got a couple more checkmates to look at. So let's have a look at fool's mate. Now, fool's mate usually is coming just from an opening. Usually it's going to be in the first few moves or so. Here we can see that the black king is wide open on the fool's mate diagonal from H to E. And the white king also open from H to E. That's the fool's mate diagonal. And white, if it's white's turn, there's the checkmate. Queen swings over. Obviously, it could also be done with the bishop. And for black, the queen comes into G3 for the checkmate in fool's mate. And you can have a look at a little drawing to help us understand the idea. In fool's mate, it usually, or a lot of times, happens after only a couple moves. If white pushes up the F and the G pawns, the G pawn going up 2 squares, then it leaves that open diagonal, that vulnerable diagonal from the H file to the E file. And you can see this poor king is lamenting, pushing up his G and F pawns first, and everybody's pretty embarrassed about it. So that's why we push our center pawns, don't push your side pawns. Okay, our final checkmate pattern is smothered mate. And smothered mate is with a knight. Let's have a look at our final one. We see that knight, the white knight jumping in here, and the king is smothered or trapped by his own pieces. So knight f7 for the checkmate, and if it was black's turn, black would have moved knight into f3, not only checking the king, but also guarding his escape square. Now I've got a nice little drawing in smothered mate as well. There it is. The knight jumping into f7, checkmating that poor king. He's trapped by his own rook and his own pawns. The queen is celebrating. All right. Those are some fundamental checkmates. Keep watching. You'll see more videos coming up with those as well. I'll check you later.